They told me the royal blood was rotting from within, poisoned by generations of inbreeding, and that only fresh peasant stock could save the dynasty from extinction. My name is Isabella de' Medici, and I became Queen of Portugal at 20 years old when I married King João IV in 1640. I was selected for my illustrious Italian lineage, my political connections to powerful banking families, and my youth that promised decades of producing heirs. My purpose was singular and absolute: provide Portugal with healthy children to secure the Braganza succession and restore the kingdom's independence from Spanish rule. But my husband carried a genetic curse, inherited disease that had killed most of his siblings and left him weak, sickly, and increasingly incapable of fathering healthy children. By 1643, after 3 years of marriage that had produced only stillbirths and infants who died within days, the royal physicians delivered a devastating verdict. The king's blood was black, corrupted, dying. The dynasty was ending unless radical intervention occurred immediately. They smuggled a farmer into the palace, a robust, healthy peasant from the countryside who represented everything the weakened royal bloodline lacked. The queen trembled when she saw him, understanding instantly what was being demanded. "He is robust," the chief advisor whispered as he locked the bedchamber door. "His blood is clean and strong. You will replace the bloodline, Isabella. You will bear children fathered by this peasant and present them as royal heirs, or you will watch Portugal fall back under Spanish control as the Braganza line dies out completely." This is the story of how desperate advisors' secret eugenic program, a terrified queen's forced compliance, and a farmer's unexpected nobility created the healthiest royal generation Portugal had seen in centuries, and how the children born from that clandestine arrangement would eventually discover the truth about their origins and force the kingdom to confront the lies upon which their entire succession had been built. Let me take you back to 1640. To the day I arrived in Lisbon as a bride, completely unprepared for the genetic nightmare I was entering. Portugal had just won independence from Spain after 60 years of forced union, and the new King João IV desperately needed to establish his dynasty's legitimacy and permanence. The Braganza family had been elevated to royalty only through revolution, and their hold on power was tenuous, dependent entirely on producing heirs who could continue the line and prevent Spain from reclaiming control. I was 20 years old, daughter of one of Florence's most powerful banking families, educated in arts and sciences, and raised to understand that royal marriages were political alliances where personal feelings were irrelevant. The wedding was magnificent, held in Lisbon's grandest cathedral with representatives from across Europe, witnessing Portugal's new independence and legitimacy. I wore Venetian lace and Florentine jewels, looking every inch the queen I was meant to become. João was handsome enough in his ceremonial robes, 35 years old, tall and dark with the Portuguese features I'd expected. He smiled at me during the ceremony, but I noticed his hand trembled when he placed the ring on my finger, and his skin had a grayish pallor that suggested poor health. The wedding night revealed the full extent of the horror I'd married into. João came to my chambers as tradition required, dismissed the witnesses who'd observed us getting into bed together, and then sat on the edge of the mattress, breathing heavily as if the simple act of walking had exhausted him. "Isabella," he said without looking at me, "I must tell you the truth before you discover it yourself and think you've been deliberately deceived into a doomed marriage." "What truth, Your Majesty?" "I am unwell, very unwell. I carry a disease in my blood inherited from my mother's line that has killed most of my relatives. 6 of my siblings died before reaching adulthood. The 2 who survived besides me are both sickly and unlikely to produce children. My father's first wife lost 8 children, all stillborn or dead within weeks. My own first wife before you lost 3 children the same way before she died herself from complications." I stared at him in horror. "You're telling me you carry some inherited illness that kills children, and you married me anyway without warning me?" My advisors insisted Portugal needs heirs desperately. They believed that perhaps with healthier foreign bloodline like yours, strong Italian stock, we might produce children who survive despite my family's curse. They were wrong to hide this from you, but they were terrified of losing the marriage alliance if we revealed the truth. So I'm supposed to bear children knowing they'll likely die, supposed to endure pregnancy and birth repeatedly only to watch infants perish. We can try. We must try. Portugal's independence depends on establishing succession. If we have no heirs, Spain will argue the Braganza claim has failed and will attempt to reconquer us. You're asking me to sacrifice my body and sanity to a futile effort at producing doomed children. I'm begging you to help save my kingdom despite the terrible odds we face. That first year confirmed every fear. I became pregnant quickly, carried a son to term through 9 months of difficult pregnancy, and gave birth to a baby who lived only 4 days before dying from what physicians called black blood, some disorder that caused internal bleeding and organ failure. The grief was crushing, made worse by knowing this was likely to be repeated. The second pregnancy, 6 months later, ended in stillbirth at 7 months. The third pregnancy produced twins who both died within hours of birth. By early 1643, years into my marriage, I'd endured 4 pregnancies and buried 5 children. The emotional toll was devastating, but the political consequences were even worse. João's health was deteriorating rapidly. The same black blood disease that killed infants was slowly killing him, causing weakness, bleeding episodes, periods of delirium. He could barely walk without assistance. Court physicians privately told his advisors that the king likely had less than 5 years to live, and without a surviving heir, the Braganza dynasty would end with him. In March of 1643, the chief royal advisor, Cardinal Santos, summoned me to a private meeting in his chambers. With him was the royal physician, Dr. Montero, and several other trusted counselors. Your Majesty, Santos began without preamble, the situation has become critical. The king is dying. You've lost 5 children to the family disease. Portugal's independence is threatened because we have no viable succession. We must take extraordinary measures immediately. What measures? We've tried everything the physicians recommended. Different diets, different treatments, prayers, everything. Nothing changes the fundamental reality that the royal blood is poisoned. Precisely, Dr. Montero interjected. The royal blood is poisoned beyond any medical intervention we can provide. But your blood, Your Majesty, is healthy. The problem isn't your fertility or your children's initial viability. The problem is the king's genetic contribution. Every child carries half his diseased blood, and that's what kills them. So what are you suggesting? That I find a different husband? That's not medically possible. We're suggesting you find a different father for the royal heirs, Santos said bluntly. Someone whose blood is completely healthy, utterly unrelated to Portuguese nobility, free of any inherited disease. Someone who can give you children who will survive and thrive because they don't carry the king's genetic curse. You're proposing I commit adultery and pass off bastards as legitimate heirs. We're proposing you save Portugal through whatever means necessary. The king himself has agreed to this plan in his more lucid moments. He understands his blood is killing your children, and that the only solution is to replace his genetic contribution while maintaining the legal fiction that he's the father. This is insane. The court will never accept children who don't carry Braganza blood. The children will carry your blood, which is noble Italian, and they'll be legally acknowledged by the king as his own, which makes them legitimate regardless of biological reality. We're not proposing to announce this arrangement publicly. We're proposing complete secrecy with only a handful of people knowing the truth. Who would father these children? How would you even arrange such a thing without the entire court discovering it? We've identified the perfect candidate, Santos said, a farmer from the countryside north of Lisbon. A man named Miguel Silva who's known throughout his region for exceptional health and strength. He's 32 years old, has fathered 8 healthy children with his wife, shows no signs of any hereditary illness, and is physically robust beyond anything Portuguese nobility can claim. You want me to conceive children with a peasant farmer? Yes. His complete lack of relation to any noble family, Portuguese or otherwise, means his blood is free of the genetic problems that plague aristocracy. His proven fertility and the health of his existing children demonstrate he can give you what the king cannot, surviving heirs. And his low social position means he can be controlled absolutely to ensure permanent silence. I felt nausea rising. This is treating me like breeding livestock. This is treating you like a queen whose duty is to provide heirs through whatever means necessary, Santos replied coldly. Royal marriages have always been about producing succession. We're simply being more efficient and honest about the biological realities than previous generations were. When would this happen? How would you even bring a farmer into the palace without arousing suspicion? We've made all arrangements, Dr. Montero said. Miguel has already been brought to the palace under the pretense of delivering agricultural goods. He's been told the king needs his service for a matter of vital importance to the kingdom. He'll be brought to your chambers tonight after the court has retired. Guards loyal to us will ensure privacy, and you'll do what's necessary to conceive an heir. And if I refuse, then you condemn Portugal to Spanish reconquest and yourself to a lifetime of grief as you continue bearing the king's doomed children, Santos said brutally. This isn't truly a choice, Your Majesty. This is us informing you of what will happen and giving you the courtesy of understanding in advance rather than forcing complete surprise upon you. That evening I was prepared by physicians who examined me and calculated that I was at the optimal point in my cycle for conception. They gave me herbs meant to increase fertility, though I barely needed them given how easily I became pregnant with João's doomed children. By nightfall I'd been brought to a chamber in a remote wing of the palace, far from areas where courtiers might observe or overhear. The room was furnished simply. A bed, a fireplace, minimal decoration, clearly set up specifically for this clandestine purpose. Cardinal Santos escorted me personally to the door. Your Majesty, Miguel is already inside. He's been cleaned and instructed in basic protocol, though he remains fundamentally a peasant with peasant manners and understanding. Your task is straightforward. Conceive a child. We'll continue bringing you together every few days until pregnancy is confirmed. Neither of you will speak of this to anyone ever. Do you understand? I understand I'm being violated and forced into adultery to save a dynasty I never chose to join. I understand I have no choice. I understand you're all condemning me to this nightmare and calling it duty. Those are harsh words for people trying to save your adopted kingdom, but yes, Your Majesty, you understand correctly. He unlocked the door and gestured for me to enter. Miguel was standing near the window when I entered, and my first impression was shock at how utterly common he appeared. He was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with broad shoulders and arms thick with muscle from farm labor. His hands were large and calloused, the hands of someone who worked with tools and earth. He wore clean clothing, simple but obviously new, provided by the palace since his own clothes would have been too rough and dirty. His face was weathered from sun exposure, with a short dark beard and brown eyes that looked terrified and confused. His hair was clean but simply cut, marking him clearly as common stock. He looked exactly like what he was, a healthy, robust peasant farmer suddenly thrust into a situation he couldn't fully comprehend. He bowed awkwardly when I entered, nearly losing his balance. Your Majesty, he said in accented Portuguese that marked him as rural and uneducated. I was told you needed my service, but no one explained clearly what service. They just said it was vital to Portugal and that I must obey or face execution for refusal. The cardinal and his people hadn't even fully explained the situation to Miguel. They'd simply commanded and threatened, assuming he'd understand and comply when the moment came. The cruelty was staggering. Miguel, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, has anyone actually told you why you've been brought here? What expected of you? No, Your Majesty. Just that I'm to serve you in some way that helps the kingdom. That I must never speak of whatever happens here. That my family will be rewarded if I cooperate and killed if I don't. They've kept you in the dark then. Perhaps that's more merciful than knowing in advance. I moved carefully into the room and Santos closed the door behind me, locking it from outside. Miguel, the situation is this. The king is very ill with inherited disease that kills any children we conceive together. Portugal desperately needs healthy heirs to secure independence from Spain. The cardinal and physicians have decided that you will father children on me instead of the king. Children who will be presented to the world as legitimate royal heirs but who will actually carry your healthy peasant blood instead of the king's diseased noble blood. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Miguel's eyes widened in shock and horror. They want me to lie with you? To father children on the Queen of Portugal? To commit adultery and treason and blasphemy all at once? They're commanding both of us to do exactly that. Neither of us has real choice. I've been told this will happen whether I cooperate willingly or resist and am violated anyway. You've been told your family dies if you refuse. So we're both trapped, Miguel, both being used as breeding stock to save a dynasty that cares nothing for our consent or dignity. This is monstrous, he whispered. Your Majesty, I have a wife. I have 8 children. I've been faithful to my wife for 14 years. How can they command me to betray my marriage and force myself on you? They command it because they have absolute power, and we have none, I said bitterly. Royal authority means they can do whatever they want to us and call it necessity. We're both victims here, Miguel, both being violated even though I'm technically royalty and you're technically peasantry. Neither of our positions protects us from this. We stood in that locked room, two people separated by enormous gulfs of class and education, but united by the fundamental experience of being powerless tools. The silence pressed down on us. Finally, Miguel spoke quietly. Your Majesty, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to touch royalty. I don't know how to be with someone who isn't my wife. I don't know how to commit this sin without losing my soul entirely. And I'm terrified that no matter what I do, they'll kill me and my family afterward to ensure silence. You're probably right to be terrified, I admitted. Once you've served your purpose, you become a threat to the succession's legitimacy. They'll likely arrange your death and call it an accident. That's how these things work when peasants know too much about royal secrets. Then I'm dead regardless. His voice was hollow. I cooperate and father your children and they kill me. I refuse and they kill me and my family. There's no outcome where I survive this. Perhaps. I don't know for certain. But I do know this, Miguel. If we must do this terrible thing, if we're both forced to violate our principles and our marriages, then at least we can try to preserve whatever small dignity remains. We can choose to be kind to each other even when forced to do something unkind. We can remember we're both human beings trapped by forces beyond our control. What does kindness even mean in a situation like this? It means treating each other with respect despite the violation. It means you being gentle even though you're frightened and grief-stricken about betraying your wife. It means me acknowledging your humanity even though I'm about to use your body for breeding purposes. It means we both try to survive this with our souls somewhat intact, even though everything about this situation is designed to destroy our dignity. Can you be kind to me, Your Majesty? Can you see me as a person rather than just a peasant tool they've brought for your use? I can try, Miguel. I've spent 3 years bearing dead children and being treated like a failed breeding vessel myself. I understand what it feels like to be reduced to biological function. So yes, I'll try to see you as a person, try to make this as bearable as possible for both of us. And I'll try to be gentle with you, even though I have no idea how to be gentle while committing forced adultery with a queen. That's all either of us can do, I suppose. Try to maintain humanity in an inhuman situation. We talked for hours before proceeding, sharing pieces of our lives across the class divide. Miguel told me about his farm, about growing olives and grapes in the hills north of Lisbon, about his wife Teresa who managed the household and sold produce at markets, about his 8 healthy children who helped with farm work and who he loved desperately. He told me about the pride and satisfaction of working land, of seeing crops grow from seed to harvest, of providing for his family through honest labor. I told him about my childhood in Florence, about being educated in literature and arts, about my arranged marriage to João, about the grief of losing 5 children in 3 years to a disease I didn't understand, about feeling trapped in a role that demanded I keep producing doomed babies. I told him about the loneliness of royal life, about being surrounded by courtiers but having no genuine friends, about missing Italy and feeling like a permanent foreigner in Portugal. Gradually, painfully, something like mutual understanding developed. We were both people whose lives had been destroyed by royal necessity, who'd lost control of our own bodies and futures, who were desperately trying to find meaning in suffering. Finally, deep into the night, Miguel said quietly, "Your Majesty, we can't delay forever. They'll check in the morning. If nothing has happened, they'll force it to happen in worse ways. I know, but I don't know how to begin this. I've only ever been with my husband, and that has always been difficult and sad given that it only produces dead children. I've only ever been with my wife, and even after 14 years, being intimate with anyone else feels like betrayal that will stain my soul permanently. So we're both lost and terrified, and being forced to cross lines we never thought we'd cross." Yes, but perhaps, Miguel hesitated, perhaps we could think of this differently, not as betrayal or violation, though it is both those things, but also as two people helping each other survive impossible circumstances. You need children who will live. I have ability to give you that. Maybe instead of focusing on the sin and wrongness, we focus on the good outcome we're trying to create. Healthy children who will help save Portugal. I don't know if reframing makes it less wrong, but I appreciate you trying to find meaning in this horror. Shall we proceed then? Shall we do this terrible necessary thing and pray God forgives us both? Yes. But Miguel, one thing first. What? Your Majesty, be gentle. Please be as gentle as you can. I'm so tired of pain, physical and emotional. If I must do this, if I must betray my dying husband to save his kingdom, I at least need it not to hurt more than absolutely necessary. I promise gentleness. Your Majesty, whatever kindness I can manage in this unkind situation, you'll have it. What happened next, I will describe minimally out of respect for privacy and the sacred nature of what, despite all coercion, remained an intimate human encounter. Miguel kept his promise about gentleness. He was extraordinarily careful, treating me with reverence and respect that I'd never experienced even in my marriage, constantly asking if I was comfortable, if I needed him to stop, if the pain was manageable. When it was finished, we both cried, sitting on opposite sides of the room, each grieving in our own way for the marriages and principles we'd been forced to violate. I'm sorry, he said eventually, his voice rough with emotion. Your Majesty, Isabella, I'm so sorry. You have nothing to apologize for. You were gentle and kind. The wrongness is in the situation, not in how you behaved. Still, I've committed adultery. I've betrayed my wife. I've fathered a child who isn't hers on a woman I barely know. The weight of that will crush me for however many days I have left. And I've betrayed my husband and my marriage vows. We're both guilty and both innocent simultaneously, both sinners and both victims. God will judge us eventually, and I pray he sees our hearts and understands we had no choice. In the morning, Cardinal Santos's physicians came to examine me, confirmed we'd fulfilled the command and left. Guards brought food but no communication. Miguel and I were to remain in periodic contact, meeting in this chamber every other day until pregnancy was confirmed. The pattern continued for 5 weeks, 12 more forced encounters. Each one became slightly less terrifying as familiarity replaced raw shock, though the fundamental wrongness never diminished. Between meetings, Miguel and I talked extensively, building genuine friendship across the social divide despite the horrific circumstances. He told me more about farm life and his family, about his dreams of saving enough money to buy additional land, about hoping his children would have opportunities beyond subsistence farming. I told him about Italian culture and politics, about the banking and art worlds I'd grown up in, about missing the intellectual stimulation of Florentine society that was completely absent in Portuguese court life. In our final meeting, after 5 weeks of this nightmare arrangement, something had shifted between us. The initial fear and disgust had been replaced by complicated affection born of shared suffering and maintained dignity in undignified circumstances. Your Majesty, Miguel said during one of our conversations, I need to tell you something even though it serves no purpose. What is it? I've come to care for you. Not in romantic sense, our situations make that impossible, but as one human being who's been kind to me when you had every right to be cruel. You've treated me like a person rather than just a breeding animal. You've shared your grief and loneliness. You've made this bearable when it could have been pure horror. That matters more than you might understand. I care for you too, Miguel. You've been gentle when you could have been brutal. You've maintained your honor even when forced into dishonorable situations. You've given me hope that the children we're creating might inherit your goodness along with your health. If I must betray my husband to save Portugal, I'm grateful it's with someone decent. What will happen to me after they confirm pregnancy? I think you know. They'll stage an accident or attribute your death to some convenient illness. You know too much to be allowed to live once you've served your purpose. Yes, I've accepted that reality. I just hope they honor their promise to care for my family. I hope Teresa and the children receive the money they were promised and are left in peace. I'll make sure of it, I promised. Whatever power I have as queen, I'll use to ensure your family is protected and provided for. That's the only thing I can give you in exchange for your life and your sacrifice. Thank you. That brings me peace. Knowing my death might at least benefit my wife and children makes it bearable. In early May of 1643, my monthly courses failed to appear. The physicians examined me and confirmed pregnancy. Cardinal Santos was jubilant. His secret eugenic experiment was succeeding. Within days, Miguel was quietly removed from the palace. I was told he'd been sent back to his farm, but I later learned through sympathetic servants that he'd died of sudden illness only 2 weeks after leaving. The timing was too convenient to be anything but murder. I requested permission to send money to his widow, and Santos surprisingly agreed, perhaps feeling magnanimous now that his plan had worked. I sent enough wealth to ensure Teresa and her 8 children could live comfortably for life, along with a letter explaining that Miguel had served the crown with exceptional loyalty and deserved to be honored even though the nature of his service must remain forever secret. I carried the baby through summer and autumn of 1643. The pregnancy was different from all my previous ones, healthier, easier, without the constant complications that had marked pregnancies carrying João's cursed blood. My husband, during his increasingly rare lucid moments, played his role as expectant father for court appearances, and everyone pretended this child was naturally conceived despite the king's obvious deteriorating condition. On December 3, 1643, I gave birth to a son, healthy and robust, weighing a normal 8 pounds. The physicians cleaned him and placed him in my arms, and I looked down at my baby for the first time. He was beautiful, perfect, and he was breathing steadily, crying lustily, showing every sign of vigorous health. For the first time in 3 years of attempting motherhood, I held a living child who looked like he would stay alive. The relief and joy were overwhelming, complicated immediately by grief for Miguel, who'd given this child life and paid with his own. João came to see us, carried by attendants because he could no longer walk. He looked down at the baby with tears in his eyes, understanding that this healthy child proved Cardinal Santos's theory correct, that removing his genetic contribution had been necessary to produce a surviving heir. "My son," he said weakly for the attendants and courtiers. "Prince Afonso, named for my father. May he be strong where I was weak, healthy where I was cursed, and capable of ruling the Portugal I helped free but cannot sustain." The christening occurred 2 weeks later in Lisbon's cathedral. Prince Afonso was proclaimed heir to the throne and celebrated throughout Portugal as proof that God favored the Braganza dynasty and Portuguese independence. No one publicly questioned the child's parentage, though privately some courtiers noted that Afonso looked surprisingly robust compared to other royal infants and lacked some of the distinctive Braganza family features. The official explanation, quickly established and rigorously maintained, was that my Italian bloodline had been strong enough to overcome the family weakness, which was plausible enough that people pretended to believe it. Afonso thrived in ways my previous children never had. He fed well, grew steadily, showed no signs of the bleeding disorder or organ problems that had killed his half-siblings. By age 1, he was walking and babbling. By age 2, he was healthy and energetic beyond what anyone had seen in young Braganza children for generations. And he looked like Miguel, with the same brown eyes and sturdy build and common features rather than aristocratic delicacy. Cardinal Santos, seeing the success of his experiment, approached me again in late 1645 when Afonso was 2 years old. "Your Majesty, we should continue the arrangement. Portugal needs more than one heir. We need multiple healthy children to secure the succession. You're proposing we bring in another peasant farmer? No need. We preserved Miguel's seed in special preparations the physicians created. We can continue using his genetic material without requiring his living presence." "You preserved?" I stared at Santos in horror and disgust. "You preserved his seed like you're breeding livestock?" "We preserved the biological material necessary to give you more healthy children while minimizing the moral complications of ongoing adultery," Santos replied clinically. "It's more efficient and less emotionally complicated than repeatedly bringing in living peasants." The coldness was breathtaking, but I was too exhausted to fight. Over the next 6 years, through methods I still don't fully understand and don't wish to detail, I bore 3 more children using Miguel's preserved genetic material. 2 more sons and a daughter, all healthy and robust, all presented to the world as João's legitimate children, though the king's health had deteriorated so severely that everyone knew natural conception was impossible. João died in 1656, having lived long enough to see 4 healthy children attributed to him, but knowing privately that his actual genetic line had ended with his previous wife's dead infants. On his deathbed, he called me to his side. "Isabella," he said with his last strength, "I was a terrible husband to you. I gave you nothing but grief and dead children until Santos arranged that terrible solution. But thank you for saving Portugal. Thank you for bearing healthy heirs even though it required betraying our marriage and enduring violation. The children are worth it. Portugal's freedom is worth it. And I hope someday you can forgive me for being too weak to protect you from any of this. I forgive you, João. You were a victim of your blood's curse as much as I was a victim of royal duty. We both did our best in impossible circumstances. He died peacefully, and 6-year-old Afonso became King Afonso VI, with me serving as regent during his minority. The succession was secure. Portugal's independence was established beyond Spanish challenge, and the Braganza line continued with unprecedented genetic health. I raised all 4 children knowing the truth about their origins. When they were old enough to understand, I told them about Miguel, about the forced arrangement, about the murder disguised as illness, about the complicated genetics and eugenics that had given them life. Afonso, the eldest, took the revelation hardest. Mother, are you telling me I'm the son of a peasant farmer? That I'm half common blood, half commoner, half Italian nobility, 0% Portuguese royal blood despite what everyone believes? I confirmed. The Braganza line actually ended with your father's death. You and your siblings represent an entirely new genetic line hidden under Braganza legal identity. So my entire life is a lie. My throne is built on deception. Your throne is built on survival and necessity, I corrected. Miguel's blood gave you life when royal blood would have given you death. You're healthy and strong precisely because you're not purely aristocratic. That's not shameful, Afonso. That's advantageous. But I need to know who I really am. I need to understand my true heritage. Then when you're 18 and take full royal power, you can choose what to do with this knowledge. You can maintain the official fiction, or you can reveal the truth, or you can find some middle path that honors both your legal identity and your biological reality. That's your decision to make as king. Afonso ruled Portugal for 23 years, from 1656 to 1679, and he did eventually make his choice about the truth. In 1670, when he was 27 and firmly established on the throne, he commissioned an official history of the Braganza restoration that included a carefully worded admission. The history acknowledged that João IV's genetic illness had necessitated extraordinary measures to ensure healthy succession, and that the royal line had been strengthened through introduction of robust common bloodlines while maintaining legal legitimacy through formal acknowledgement. The revelation created enormous scandal, but ultimately was accepted because Afonso was a popular and effective king whose health and capability were undeniable. He also used his power to locate Miguel's descendants, finding that Teresa had died in 1655, but that her 8 children by Miguel had survived and thrived using the wealth I'd sent. Afonso brought them to court, elevated them to minor nobility, and publicly declared them to be cousins of the crown through shared blood, without specifying exactly how that shared blood had come to exist. The oldest of Miguel's legitimate children, a son named João Silva, was shocked to learn that his father had secretly fathered the king. Father served the crown? He died for Portugal? Yes, I told him when we met privately. Your father gave his life unwillingly to save this dynasty. He was gentle and kind and honorable in circumstances designed to strip away all honor. He deserves to be remembered as a hero, even though he'd probably reject that label. Tell me about him. Tell me who he really was beyond what the crown says. So I told João Silva everything I could remember about Miguel, his gentleness, his love for his family, his pain at being forced to betray his marriage, his dignity in impossible circumstances, his hope that his death would at least benefit his wife and children. João Silva wept hearing about his father's sacrifice. We thought he'd abandoned us. Mother told us he'd gone to work for the crown and then died of illness, but we always wondered if he'd just run away. Knowing he was forced into service and murdered afterward, that changes everything. Your father loved you desperately, I assured him. His last words to me were about hoping his family would be cared for. Everything he did to protect you and your mother and siblings. That's who he was, a man who sacrificed everything, including his honor and his life, for his family. I raised a memorial to Miguel in 1675, placed in the royal chapel where it could be visited by family members. It was modest but permanent, in memory of Miguel Silva, 1611 to 1643, farmer of exceptional character who served the crown with unwilling sacrifice, who maintained dignity in circumstances designed to destroy it, and whose blood strengthened a dynasty that could not save itself. May he be remembered as a man of honor, who deserved better than the fate he received, and whose children inherited his goodness along with his health. I died in 1679 at age 59, having outlived both my husbands and having seen my 4 healthy children all survive to adulthood, marry well and produce their own healthy offspring free of the genetic curse that had plagued the Braganza line. Portugal's independence was secure, the dynasty was healthy, and the terrible secret of our origins was now public knowledge, managed with as much dignity as circumstances allowed. They buried me in the royal crypt, but at Afonso's instruction they also placed a small carving of an olive branch in my hands, symbolic of Miguel's farming heritage and the Tuscan origins that had brought me to Portugal. A quiet acknowledgement that my heart had always carried grief for the gentle farmer who'd been forced into my life and then murdered for saving the dynasty I'd never chosen to join. The historical records of this period are complicated and sometimes contradictory. King João IV's reign from 1640 to 1656 is extensively documented as he led Portugal's successful independence from Spain. His poor health and genetic illness are noted in multiple contemporary sources, as are the unusual circumstances surrounding the births of his later children when his condition had deteriorated significantly. Queen Isabella de' Medici's arrival in 1640 and her difficulties with early pregnancies and infant deaths are recorded in court documents and letters. The births of Prince Afonso in 1643 and 3 subsequent healthy siblings are documented in official records, with contemporary accounts noting the surprising vigor of these children compared to other Braganza offspring. Miguel Silva's existence and his brief service to the crown are documented in palace records from 1643, with notation of his death from illness shortly after his service concluded. The generous pension granted to his widow Teresa Silva is recorded in royal treasury documents, though the specific reasons for such generosity toward a peasant farmer's family were not officially explained until much later. King Afonso VI's commissioned history, published in 1670, created enormous scandal with its carefully worded admission of extraordinary measures and common bloodline introduction to save the dynasty from genetic collapse. Multiple contemporary letters and documents from shocked courtiers survive discussing the revelation and its implications for royal legitimacy. In 1889, Portuguese historian Antonio Ferreira published The Secret Origins of the Modern Braganza Line, examining evidence including Isabella's personal papers discovered in palace archives during renovations. These papers, authenticated by multiple scholars, detailed the forced arrangement with Miguel Silva and the subsequent secret program of using his preserved genetic material to produce multiple royal heirs. The papers also documented Cardinal Santos's eugenic theories and the deliberate decision to eliminate Miguel after he'd served his purpose. The memorial Isabella commissioned for Miguel still exists in what is now a historical chapel in Lisbon, visited by historians and descendants of both the royal line and Miguel's legitimate children. The inscription remains readable and stands as testament to one of history's earliest documented royal eugenics programs. The story has been studied as an example of how genetic disease drove desperate measures in royal families, how common bloodlines were secretly introduced to save weakened noble lines, and how individuals navigated the impossible moral territory of coerced reproduction for dynastic purposes. This is the story of Isabella de' Medici and Miguel Silva, whose forced encounter created a healthy royal line and whose survival of impossible circumstances demonstrates that dignity can persist even in coercion, that kindness can exist even in violation, and that people reduced to genetic breeding stock can still maintain essential humanity and create something valuable despite the moral horror of their situation. Isabella was forced to betray her dying husband to save his kingdom through conceiving with a peasant she'd never met. Miguel was murdered after giving life to a dynasty that saw him as useful genetic material rather than a human being deserving of life and dignity. But together, despite the coercion and class exploitation and complete wrongness of their situation, they created Afonso VI and 3 other healthy children who saved Portugal's independence and forced the kingdom to eventually confront the eugenic lies underlying their succession. If this story moves you, if you believe that people forced into impossible situations deserve recognition for maintaining dignity rather than condemnation for coerced actions, if you believe that honest acknowledgement of eugenic exploitation matters more than maintaining sanitized royal narratives, subscribe now to discover more hidden histories that challenge our assumptions about genetics, consent, class boundaries, and the troubling reality that beneficial outcomes never retroactively justify the coercive and murderous methods used to achieve them. Leave a comment sharing what aspect of this story resonates with you. Was it Isabella's transformation from victim to protector of Miguel's family, Miguel's choice of gentleness despite knowing it would cost his life, or Afonso's decision to reveal the truth and honor his biological father publicly? Your engagement helps preserve these complex human stories that force us to confront uncomfortable questions about eugenics, bodily autonomy, class exploitation, and the strange reality that genetic health sometimes required destroying lives and marriages, crimes that deserve condemnation even when the outcomes benefited kingdoms. Hit subscribe, share your thoughts, and join us in exploring the complicated truths behind royal dynasties and the real people who paid terrible prices for genetic experiments they never consented to, but that shaped history nonetheless.